Hello, everybody. This talk is about humor, awe, and recovery from cults. This talk is about humor, but it's going to be a serious talk, so I ask you to refrain from laughing. Or, no, I can't do that with a straight eye. Okay, so this is the overview, but to start, I'm currently working on a book with this title. It's going to get better, but if you really want to, I can send you the working manuscript. And this talk is about maybe 3 or 4 pages out of the book. So the basic argument is that awe is psychologically incompatible with humor, that they don't mix, they're like oil and water, and that property of humor and of awe is relevant for recovery. So could be that humor is incompatible with all dissociated states, because humor is, in a way, commentary on reality, and people who are dissociated don't have a regular relationship with reality. Okay, so this is related to talk I gave 2 years ago, and also I think 5 years ago, or a little bit. But so this is just a little review. So awe, the emotion, which is a bundle of emotions like love. Awe includes wonder and mystery and all those things. I collectively call them awe. And they have very many non-trivial traits, awe, and it is a very interesting subject, but there's 3 properties of awe that I want to start discussing here because they're going to be relevant. So the first one is that awe makes us feel like something is really real, right? That it is a great truth, an ultimate truth. And we'll get back to that a little bit later. Another thing about awe is that it is serious. It is important. It is no laughing matter. It is not creaky. And awe is connected to vastness, and awe makes us feel like sometimes make us feel like we are small in the presence of something that's bigger than us, something that's better than us. If you want, there's a chair here that you can drag over there. Okay, so now we get to humor and the 3 theories of humor, and realize that are the 3 main theories of humor. Now, I'm not talking about laughter. Laughter, babies laugh, laughing gas can make us laugh, tickling can make us laugh. Humor is just one of the ways that we can make to laugh, and you don't need to laugh for something to be funny and for you to think of it as fun. Okay, so there are 3 main theories. Let's start with the first one. It's called the incongruity theory of humor. And so this is from Star Wars reference, and this is Tom Hanks was in a movie called Philadelphia. He won an Academy Award. And incongruous humor is humor where you realize that you made a mistake. Okay, or the setup for the punchline sets up the joke, and then the punchline makes you realize that, oh, I should have thought of it different. So, for example, I asked the joke, why did the Siamese twins go to England? So that the other one can drive. The setup of the question, I'm gonna explain the joke, which is what ruins jokes. The setup of the question asks, why go to England? And you think, well, why do people go to England and different things? And then the punchline you raise, oh, I should have thought of England as the place where you sit on the other side of the car. Okay, now incongruous humor in this theory can be dark humor, right? This is an original Hitler painting. It said if you paint like this, you're literally worse than Hitler. Um, but this is the most famous quote from the philosophy of humor. It is by E.B. White, who wrote Charlotte's Web, and it goes, humor can be dissected as a frog can, but the thing dies in the process, and the innards are discouraging to any but the pure scientific mind. So that's why when you explain a joke, it ruins the joke because it takes away the incongruity, it takes away the surprise, it takes away the twist, it takes away the realizing that actually I should have thought of it different because no, and I'm laying out how you should think about it, and then it takes the humor out of the joke. The next theory of humor is called the playfulness theory of humor. And this argues that humor forces us into a playful mindedness, which is why humor is not always possible. And in the cult and recovery realm, there are situations where humor is inappropriate, where it is impossible, where it is not the right thing, right? So I'm not saying that humor, but when possible, it forces us into a playful mindedness. Next, we have the superiority theory of humor. And this is humor where we feel like we are better than someone, we are bigger than them, we look down on them. And it's the type of humor that sometimes there are cults where only this humor is allowed about outsiders. But other types of humor are not. So, for example, if we take this, we have here this high-tech situation. This person's trying to get Wi-Fi and all this thing, and then the most low-tech of low-tech, a hand comes and grabs this. And it's funny because we laugh at this person who just had his phone stolen, but it is funny because you can say the incongruity of the high-tech and the low-tech, right? So now a specific take on the superiority theory of humor is self-deprecating humor, which is what happens when you make fun of yourself, right? So, um, um, so self-deprecating humor is when you laugh at yourself, and so you're putting yourself down. It can make people feel at ease, but it is something that some people misuse, and they use self-deprecating humor to an extent where it's actually not a healthy thing. But in many cases, it is healthy and it is good. And we'll talk about it a little later. So we have these three main theories of humor, and now let's see how they compare with the aspects of awe that we discussed at the beginning. So here we have at the top one we have the playfulness theory of humor, and we see that humor is serious and important. Humor is unserious and playful. Okay, so there is incompatibility there. The next theory of humor, we see that humor is incongruity. That means that this is humor where you realize where you made a mistake. That is incompatible with the feeling that something is really real, that you're in the presence of the ultimate truth, of the great truth, right? So there is an incompatibility in this theory of humor. Next, we have the third theory of humor, where we look down on on something that we're laughing at. We feel like we're superior to them, while in awe, as we saw, you can feel like you are in the presence of something bigger than you, that you're inferior, you're to something that you are in the presence of. Okay, so as you can see, every theory of humor, and no matter what type of humor, they're all incompatible with awe, psychologically. Okay, so another incompatibility is evident in a neurological condition called temporal lobe epilepsy. And in this type of epilepsy, some people develop what's called Geschwind syndrome, and Geschwind syndrome makes people what neurologists called it enhanced religiosity. So they are very religious. They feel awe a lot, and they are. I think I'll present next year maybe all about this epilepsy because it's fascinating, and I think there's a number of cult leaders that might have had it. But and one of the symptoms of temporal lobe epilepsy is humorlessness. That's at the bottom here. Humorlessness sobriety, described as overgeneralized ponderous concern, humor lacking, or idiosyncratic. So we see this neurological condition that, according to the literature, make people feel a lot of awe, and it makes people humorless or sober. So now, there are actually some aspects that awe and humor share. So both offer relief for highly stressed people or people who are in distressful situations, right? This is from the Audible Courage movie. So both awe and humor people can use to calm themselves down. And in Christian martyrdom, there are many stories of people who are being tortured by the Romans, and then they use humor. But awe comes us down for one reason, and it's because I think it's because it's connected to child-to-parent love psychologically, and parents calm children down. I'll talk about it later. In humor, it just forces us into the playful mindness, right? As we saw in the second theory of humor is that it forces us into playfulness. And so even in a situation like that, if you can use humor, well, that forces your mind into a playful mindset, and that might make the situation more tolerable. Another a connection between them is that they both relate to feelings of knowing, which are very interesting, and that's a recommended book. They manipulate us, the feelings of knowing manipulate us in specific ways. And another connection is that both awe and humor are easier to induce in a crowd than in an individual. So it's easier for me to make all of you laugh than just one of you laugh. And in cultic situation, of course, there are times where it's easier for someone to induce awe in a crowd than it is one-on-one. Now, there are triggers. What triggers awe and what triggers humor, and at least the incongruity theory of humor, are it can be miracles. It can be many things that induce awe. It can be celebrities, right? If Paul McCartney would walk in the door, we'd all feel awe. But miracles and jokes and funny things, there's some overlap between them. There are things that can be interpreted as miraculous, but they can also be interpreted as a joke. Depends on how you approach them. And so there's some connection there. Now, both of them are ways for bypassing because of their power to calm us down, as we saw in the distressing. So you got spiritual bypassing where you use awe. If you do, everybody knows what that is? Yeah. But there's also something called sense of humor bypass where you just use humor to bypass your problems, okay? Everybody knows? You know what this is. Yeah, it's just a way to cope. If you got a big problem in your life that you're trying to avoid, you can use awe and meditate, and then that makes you able to ignore it, or you can use humor. So let's take a step back and see, why is awe so important, and what role does it play in allowing us to in recovery, right? I've been talking about those two things being incompatible. So let's see why that is useful. So according to the argument I present in my book and that I presented in previous ICSA conferences, the emotion of awe is to religion like the emotion of love is to family, okay? But notice that they're not necessary component. Okay, so you can be in a family without love, and you can be in a religion without awe. There might be necessary for the onset of the family or the religion, but it's not that they're one-to-one. It's not a simple connection. And as I argue in my book, we have a collection of things that are related to family psychology. This would be love, the emotion, the falling in love, which is either parentally or romantically. We have limerence, which is the state of being in love or romantically infatuated. And we have a family identity. On the religious side, the religious psychology side, we have awe is the equivalent of love. I mean, there are very important differences, but they are many commonalities. Conversion is equivalent to falling in love. This psychological state that I call fervor is similar to limerence, the state of being in love, and we have what I call a belief identity, which is something that we can get attached to. So, awe is to fervor like love is to infatuation, but love is an emotional experience, okay? So I hope that makes sense. And love experiences are a catalyst to falling in love, and similarly, awe experiences are catalysts to a conversion or being born again, right? So being born again is sort of like converting to your same, to the faith you're already in. Now, normal awe experiences, they strengthen a person's faith, but sufficiently strong awe experiences can cause a conversion. So you might say, wait a minute, those are two opposite reactions to how can awe experiences cause the opposite effect, right? But we see a similar dynamic in love psychology where a moderate love experience within a family can strengthen the family, but a sufficiently strong awe experience in the right context, in the right situation, the right conditions can cause a member of the family to fall in love with the neighbor. And that can be the breakup of a family. So also with love, we see that moderate experiences tend to strengthen a family, but a strong enough experience can also lead someone to switch to another family. Now, this is a quote by William James. And he says that mystical experiences have a noetic quality. Noetic means relating to knowledge. Okay. Although so similar to states of feeling, mystical states seems to those who experience them to be also states of knowledge. There are illuminations, revelations full of significance and importance, and as a rule, they carry with them a curious sense of authority for aftertime. Now, note that this description, if you change mystical experience to love experience, for example, when you fall in love with a baby, which can happen to you involuntarily, if someone puts a baby on your doorstep, you can change your life drastically. But what you have is a state of feeling from falling in love with a baby, but it's also a state of knowledge. And the knowledge is that you need to take care of the baby. Those experiences and states of knowledge are very important, very significant, and they carry a curious sense of authority for aftertime. So they have a very long, lingering effect, sometimes lifelong lingering effect. And when this type of a conversion happens, right? So when you fall in love with a baby, that creates a commitment. That creates a blind spot into the faults of the baby. That creates a sensitivity to criticism. That creates resilience to punishment, to negative experiences. Even though you have to change the diapers of the baby every day, that doesn't extinguish your love for the baby. So there's many similarities between converting into a cult, getting those blind spots, getting this sensitivity to criticism, and falling in love, as we will see. So, but before I get okay, so let's see how awe relates to the really real, right? Remember at the beginning, Is it really hot here? There's no way to. Um.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, but then we'll hear people in the hallway. I don't know. What is there? Oh, control to the AC. Um. So our experience can feel like a proof of things that are not related to the our experience. Okay. So we have here an inexplicable event, which is, let's say, a miracle, but as I said, it's anything that can induce a strong enough emotion of awe, and it proves a set of unrelated claims, right? So in the Christian Bible, we have Jesus walking on the water, and the people on the boat, they think that they are seeing a ghost, right? So they think that the miracle proved that ghosts exist. But then when Jesus gets to the boat, he says, no, it doesn't prove that ghosts exist. It proves that I am Jesus. It is me, Jesus. But the unusual buoyancy of Jesus could prove that Islam is correct. It could prove that aliens have landed. It could prove that we're living in a simulation. It could prove that Buddhism is correct. It could prove that he is the Son of God. But there is no connection between the miracle and the conclusion that we draw from the miracle. And what does it, and this is the feeling of knowing aspect, it makes us unable to see that there is no connection. It makes total sense for the people on the boat that this has been proven. We now know, and the very strong awe experience, and it can cause as I said, the commitment and the sensitivity to criticism and all that. So what we have here is an establishing experience causing beliefs, okay? Now, beliefs make us behave in a certain way, right? So when the experiences cause beliefs, the beliefs makes us behave, but when that behavior systematically brings about additional awe experiences, we can get a feedback. And in cults, this feedback can become a self-reinforcing and self-amplifying feedback. So it gets stronger and stronger. Every time now we're stronger believers, so we're going to fast longer, or we're going to meditate, or something, and then this can get to a maximum. Now, this is a simplified version. In my talk in Manchester, I went through all sorts of other additional relationships in there, but no time for it now. And I want to save some time at the end for you guys to maybe tell jokes from. So this was my talk, or this is about half of my talk in Kentucky. But as you can see, there's many diverse causes and all sorts of things that can happen that cause awe, and it's anomalies, it's impressive things, it is altered states of consciousness, it is all sorts of things. Our experiences are very interesting. They have a vestibular component. They make us sometimes hallucinate, or feel that we are lighter, we're floating, we're heavier. So balance, and they can have all sorts of outcomes, and they can be, and they're healthy, probably awe experiences, but they can be dangerous. So let's go back to the incompatibility with awe and humor. And this incompatibility, as we saw, humor can have a long-lasting effect for aftertime, as William James calls it. And that means that for many people who have undergone this type of transformation. And by the way, I think that this conversion effect, this ability to transform your life and join a cult, or join change your life fundamentally, I think this is a basic mammalian property. All mammals, or female mammals, and some mammals it's also males like humans, but they turn from a bobcat to a mother bobcat, which is a different set of behaviors, a different set of priorities, different. And this transformation, it's built into the mammalian psychology. And unfortunately, psychology doesn't pay attention too much to that ability to transform. But I think that when people join cults, the strong awe experience triggers this mechanisms that allows us to change our lives, to change our priorities, to change our habits, to change our relationships, and all of that. So for my hope and my assertion or my suspicion is that because humor is incompatible with awe, if we have memories or we have experience of that are still connected to awe, right? That when we join the group or and trauma can cause awe, okay? Right? Someone can crash their car, be so affected, and decide now I am going to become more religious. And so the hope is that through humor you can scrub the awe from you by being able to laugh at what happened, being able to laugh at the cult leader, being able to laugh at yourself and how you were before you joined, maybe. My hope is that it can be a part of recovery, but also it can be something that is an indicator. If someone is unable to have any humor about it, or maybe now they are starting to be able to have humor. So it's also a gauge. But the humor that could be useful, it's not just regular humor, but it's helpful if it's domestic, domain specific humor. So for example, I grew up in Israel, and everybody was, of course, systematically traumatized by Holocaust narratives growing up. And there was a joke when little kids in Israel, there was a joke that everybody knew that goes, what's worse than finding a worm in your apple? And the answer was finding half a worm in your apple, right? Because you ate the other. But when I went to high school, we started telling a different joke, which was, what's worse than finding half a worm in your apple? The Holocaust, like, duh. Yeah, I think you should know that. Uh, and that can be generalized, So to say, if you're two former Scientologists, you say, well, what's worse than stubbing your toe? Well, Scientology is, right? So, so, for example, for people who are in a religious, a Christian themed cult, you can be in a group where Jesus forgives, right? But when you make fun of the leader, and it says forgiveness stops, right? Or if you're in a Eastern, karma themed cult, maybe you might, this is the type of humor, right? Right. So the let's get the final slide. Fight any instinct to be humorless, for humorlessness is the worst of all absurdities. And there are many groups, where humorlessness was prevailing. As I said, in some groups where you can only laugh at outsiders. But this ability to laugh and have inside jokes about a cult is one of the reasons why I think communities of ex-members are so valuable. Because you can have a community where there are people that they're not still, sometimes when you tell someone your story, they might be traumatized by just hearing it and they cannot laugh about it. But then if you talk to former members and they'll, we can all laugh because we've been through it. And I think ICSA conferences, similarly, I think one of the values and one of the therapeutic and helpful things that come out of ICSA conferences is that we can meet and we can laugh at situations that are hard to laugh at and that are sometimes impossible to laugh at, or that are very difficult to laugh at in other circumstances. We are in a situation in a group here where everybody knows this. We don't need to get through the trauma to be able to laugh. Everybody here is already at a place that maybe they can be more playful about the atrocities that people have had. So we have, I guess, 5 more minutes.